The concept of infinity was first proposed by an ancient Greek philosopher named Zeno of Elea. Infinity shows up everywhere in our world, whether in things that are actually infinite or things that are seemingly infinite. Like a Rubik's Cube has 46 quintillion possible combinations. There's no way we'll see every one of those in a human lifetime, but it is finite. Authors explore the infinite. One of my favorite short stories of all time is The Library of Babel by Jorge Luis Borges, which talks about a library that contains every possible 410-page book that could ever be written. Of course, the infinite also shows up in our games. Things like No Man's Sky were designed with 18 quintillion unique worlds. And of course, Magic the Gathering, which was designed with the core principle of having seemingly infinite replayability.
In his article, The Creation of Magic the Gathering, which, by the way, I strongly recommend you read, Richard Garfield cited a board game called Cosmic Encounter as a huge source of inspiration. What he loved about the game was the depth. The base game featured nearly 50 unique races, each with their own stats and abilities. Every time Garfield picked up the game with friends, something new would happen, something surprising and exciting. With that core framework in mind, that sense that every game was its own experience, Garfield began design on Magic the Gathering. Today, in 2019, this concept isn't foreign. Games like Yu-Gi-Oh!, Hearthstone, and the Pokemon trading card game, just to name a few, have seen equally mainstream success. They too are trading card games. What makes Magic spectacular is that, in 1993, this didn't exist. So not only was Garfield creating a game that was unique upon every play, he was pioneering a genre of tabletop gaming. Today, trading card games rival board games and standard card games in their enormous scope and success, and much of it is thanks to Richard Garfield.
Magic is also limitless in its story. Richard Garfield wanted a cohesive narrative to go with Magic, but one that would not excessively limit the concept and mechanics of cards. The solution? A multiverse. Magic is set over countless planes. Most recently, the players have been introduced to the jungles of Ixalan, the deserts of Amonkhet, and the mechanical ether-filled Kaladesh. To give these worlds cohesion, the game is populated with planeswalkers, powerful beings who can traverse these planes and are central to the story. The story as a whole will likely never come to an end, which fits the ever-expanding nature of the game. At its core, Magic is a competitive game, and like many of its kind, it exists on two important levels. The game itself, the mechanics, the rules, the fundamentals, and the metagame, the strategies that are successful and evolving. Magic's metagame, which is really what makes it interesting, revolves entirely around the pool of available cards. The game itself is played in several formats. Standard, where the only available cards are from the past year and a half or so. Modern, where the available cards go back to 8th edition from 2003. And Legacy, where cards from any time in Magic's history are allowed. The metagame itself is shifted by two things: the introduction of new cards and the banning of old cards. Standard has the most meta shifts. Standard decks from 2 years ago are now completely obsolete by the constant rotation and addition of new cards. A year ago, the most prevalent decks played around Hazoret the Fervent, who is now completely rotated out. Recently, the introduction of cards like Wilderness Reclamation have made combo decks one of the big names of the game. Modern recently saw a change in its own metagame with the banning of Park Clan Ironworks in January, which took out a powerful combo deck, and the introduction of a brand new card, Arclight Phoenix, which created entirely new decks revolving around it. Legacy's last big meta shift, on the other hand, happened nearly a year ago with the banning of Deathrite Shaman, a card that was so powerful that nearly every deck in the format played it. What's important here is that the introduction or banning of simply a few cards can completely recontextualize how we play Magic. Every new set also brings new possibilities and makes Magic nearly a new game. One of my favorite testaments to the limitless potential of MTG doesn't come from the metagame, but from those subverting it, rogue deck builders. Like I said, Magic has a metagame. There are a dozen or so tier 1 decks, but a good player can dismantle them with whatever they have. The biggest testament to this is a YouTuber named Saffron Olive, who runs several series playing Magic online with janky, fun, and just plain weird decks. He finds obscure 5-mana artifacts and mechanics that were printed once in 2009, just makes them into legitimate decks. He's produced probably hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of YouTube comment, and is a relentlessly positive soul. If you haven't, go give him a watch, and just remind yourself how fun this game can be. I started playing Magic the Gathering in 2010. I was a 9-year-old camper at a overnight summer camp where everyone played Magic. It was so much fun. I used borrowed cards from whoever would lend me them. I played all the time, and it was just a blast. And the moment I got home, I made my parents take me to Target so I could get my first cards. This is one of my first cards. It's a foil Student of Warfare. I bring it closer to the camera, but I don't trust myself with getting it all lined up. This card is in not very good condition. The edges are kind of scratched away. The black border has kind of become this weird, like, whitish, and there's lots of little scuffs and all that, but I don't think I'd have it any other way. This was my first card, and since then I've collected over 10,000 probably. Magic has kind of stayed as a mainstay in my life, both as a social thing and in every other way, you know. And it's just something that I'm so thankful that I've been able to do for the past 9 years. This summer I'm going back to that same summer camp. I'm going to be a counselor, and one thing I really want to do is introduce people to Magic in the same way that I was introduced to Magic, you know, just sit down with someone and really get them invested in the same way that I was. And to the viewer out there, thank you so much for watching. This is kind of my first endeavor into YouTube, and I kind of want to make it something I do more of. So if you enjoyed this, the best things you can do are like the dumb YouTuber spiel, like and subscribe, you know. But also, one of the greatest things you can do is just send this to someone who you think would be interested. It's one of the best ways you can get the word out. I'm pretty active on my social media, so if you have any more questions for me, you can drop it in the YouTube comments, or you can DM me on Twitter. I'll gladly respond. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, goodbye.